Chapter 1. Creating an account. Once you have logged in, make sure you are on the Volunteers tab. Then click on New. In the next window, start typing the basic information, such as first name, last name, and date of birth. Create the user ID. The user ID should be the volunteer's email address. In this case, let's use happyvolunteer@gmail.com. Then create the password. When you first set up an account, use password 1. All lowercase. All in one word. Now enter the volunteer's mailing address. In this example, we will continue using fictitious information. Before going to the next step, you need to change the volunteer's status to active. Click on Apply to save the information and proceed to the next tab. Or click on Finish to save the information and close this tab. Click on References. You will need to add at least 2 references for each volunteer account you create. Click on Add a reference. Add the first and last names. Then add the email address. Click on Apply to save the information. Once you have entered the information, select the first reference and click on Send Solicitation Email. Then, add a second reference following the same steps. After sending both references, the field solicitation date will be automatically populated. You will need to check when the reference responded. The date of the response will show in the Respond Date field. When finished, click on User-Defined Fields. User-defined fields includes important information about the volunteer's preferences, background, availability, etc. First, you will need to add the volunteer's emergency contact name, phone number and email address. We ask that you always fill out this information. Next, click on Additional Information. Please be patient as Evans records all of this information for the first time. Now indicate whether the volunteer previously worked at the Smithsonian. If yes, you will need to enter the badge information and indicate which program they belong to. Then click on Education and Experience. This works like a resume. First, indicate the volunteer's educational background. Then, indicate the volunteer's professional experience. And finally, previous volunteer positions at other organizations. Click on Languages. In this window, you will indicate whether the volunteer can speak another language and how well. Next, click on Supervisors. Enter the ID of the volunteer's supervisor, either yourself or a colleague of yours. The ID will be the last name and the first letter of the first name. Do not include it si.edu. You need to enter this information, otherwise the supervisor will not be able to place the volunteers within opportunities and schedule slots. Now click on VIS. In this window, please indicate which unit the volunteer will work for as well as their availability. For example, at the Hirshhorn Museum on Friday mornings. Another way to indicate the volunteer's availability is by clicking on the Availability tab. Here you can indicate when the volunteer will start and stop volunteering at the Smithsonian. You can further indicate availability by selecting morning, afternoon shifts or both or none for each day of the week. Now click on Interview. In this window, you can indicate when the volunteer submitted an application, when it was reviewed and accepted, if the volunteer needs to receive training, etc. Please make sure to keep this information accurate and up to date. Click on Locations. Here you will indicate which unit the volunteer is interested in volunteering. Now click on History. Here you can track any changes made to the account and any entries made by the volunteer. You can apply filters to only look, for example, information entered in regards to opportunities the volunteer is placed with, or logbook entries created by the volunteer. You can also add notes. Please be aware, these notes cannot be deleted. Now click on Attachments. You can upload a resume or other documents. Click on Date Registered. Here you will indicate the status of the volunteer. For example, if the volunteer needs orientation for a position or specialized training. Lastly, indicate when the volunteer was interviewed and the account registered. This date will be counted as the date the volunteer was added to Evans. When done, click on Finish to save the information and close this window. While you are not required to fill out each field, we ask that you enter as much information as possible. This will help keep volunteers' records accurate and up to date. This concludes Chapter 1.